Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got a big show for you on this one. Yeah, the ACC is collapsing. I'm talking it's happening real time. All of these teams, they want out, and they want out right now.
Get me out of here! Here, just eat that! Leave us alone!
And they're not kidding. They have a terrible deal set up for their TV rights. And the money that they're going to make over the next umpteen years is atrocious compared to what the SEC and the Big Ten are making or going to make. So they're freaking out, and rightfully so, because if your competitors are going to make multiples more than you are, you're going to be in trouble, especially when you're trying to compete directly with them. So we're going to get into all of this. And this is what everybody's talking about. It's a group of 7 ACC schools, including Clemson and Florida State, are considering ending their grant of rights deals, which could pave a road to departing the conference completely. It says, to further the panic in conference realignment, several ACC schools are considering breaking their media rights deals currently running until 2036. I still can't believe they signed a deal through 2036.
You big dummy!
Especially the way football is just moving constantly so fast, and the money's doing this, and they signed some 20-year deal that sticks them with a certain amount of money while all the other conferences are making a killing. So that could result in the schools leaving the ACC entirely, triggering more moves. Said the current wave of college athletic conference realignments brought about a rocky situation in the ACC for its 14-member schools, and the SEC and the Big Ten are targeting several of their best teams. And according to Sports Illustrated's Ross Dellinger, a group of 7 schools have formed something of an agreement that the current situation ACC rights deal is untenable. And this story's on Mail Online. It says those schools have met actually a handful of times over the past several months with their lawyers examining the grant of rights to determine just how unbreakable it is, because this contract's no guarantee that they can break it. But you've got 7 schools: Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina State, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. The thinking was that you needed at least 6 to 1 out of the conference to be able to break those rights agreements, but they've got 7, and some people think it'll take 8 because that would be over 50%. And it says, when pertaining to college athletics, a grant of rights is an agreement made between schools and conferences, and I believe it allows the conference to negotiate the media deals on their behalf. They're basically pooling their rights to better sell them to media. And what the problem is the money that the ACC's not getting. That's really why they're upset. If they were getting as much money as SEC and the Big Ten, they wouldn't care. They'd be fine. They're in a massive 20-year deal that runs to 2036 and was agreed upon back 7 years ago. And in subsequent years, both the Big Ten and SEC have signed deals which carry significantly less term but pay way more, which means they're going to re-sign another deal in a few years, and it's going to be a ton more, while the ACC stuck with peanuts. So the SEC agreed to a 10-year deal with ESPN in 2020 that pays out $811 million a year beginning in 2024. Last year, the Big Ten did a 7-year deal for over $1 billion per year. So as meanwhile, the ACC's 20-year deal pays out about $240 million, or about 1/3 or 1/4 of what the others are making. But again, the SEC and the Big Ten will sign another contract in 2030 that will be way bigger. And so the ACC will be stuck behind again 6 more years.
That's not fair.
Don't raise your voice to me.
So they're going to make just a tiny amount. So they've almost got to get out of this conference. So the 7 schools have 3 options. First, they could seek more money from ESPN, but that's not likely. ESPN is struggling financially, and they're not doing well. They're firing people left and right. Second option would be to all separately leave the ACC and cough up a $120 million exit fee that will leave them all to try and join other conferences such as Big Ten. They're not going to do that. They're not going to cough up $120 million each. The third option would be to have those 7 schools band together at another school and form their own conference. Of those 3 options, the second seems to be the most likely. However, legal experts believe the current ACC grant of rights agreement is legally airtight. Well, that could be can they come up with $120 million each? I just can't see that. It says, additionally, the Big Ten and SEC seem relatively happy with the current size. They would compete for those other teams. I'll go ahead and tell you they absolutely would. So that would leave the 7 to try and hammer out a deal with either the Pac-12 or Big 12. I don't see that happening. I just don't see that happening. But again, the big issue is over $800 million to the SEC schools for the next several years, over $1 billion for the Big Ten schools over the next several years, and they're stuck at what, 240 million. There's no way they can compete. It's impossible. When you've got other teams getting 3 and 4 times as much money as you are, you're not going to be able to smell competing. So they're just going to continue to trend down, and it's going to be very difficult on them. So they've got to figure out a way to get out of this thing. And I don't see ESPN renegotiating because they're in a tough financial situation too. So it's a big mess. It's a big, ugly mess. So let's talk about what the SEC would probably try to do. I think they would want Florida State for sure and Clemson. Those are your 2 jewels in the ACC, and I think the SEC would want those 2. I think the Big Ten is probably going to want Virginia and North Carolina for recruiting and for that region. I think they'd love to get their tentacles down into those 2 states. And if they could get Miami, that'd be a real home run for them, because then they've got Florida and that whole area for recruiting and for exposure. So that really seems to be what's happening there. Now, I would think that the SEC would probably try to take Virginia Tech and North Carolina State, if I had to guess, along with Clemson and Florida State, and maybe even Miami. So they'd probably want 4 or 5 of them. It appears what we're going to have is probably some huge conferences like the SEC, Big Ten, and a couple, maybe 3 huge conferences, maybe 4. And I think we're going to get away from 5 because I think the ACC is just going to disappear. There's just not enough money there, and there's too many problems, and all these teams want out, and they want out now. They want out as quick as they can get out because they see the handwriting's on the wall. The money's not there, and it's all about competition and the Benjamins. And they're using the term untenable, which means they've got to get out in legal terms. So this is going to be a huge mess, and I'm going to be real interested to see where these teams end up and how they manage to finagle their way out of the ACC. It's going to be very interesting. And the SEC is probably going to scoop up several of them, and Big Ten as well. And then we'll just, the rich will get richer and the poor will find their place. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover the Vols and the ACC now, and the SEC and all this good stuff. And if you've not subscribed, it's right here on your right, my left. Just boom, that's all you got to do. Hit that little button. I would appreciate it. And right over here, YouTube thinks you will love this video. It's my most recent one. Algorithm tells you that. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you did like the content. We'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.